Let's pretend you're in Excel and you have a data validation list and you want to select more than one value. Is it even possible? If so, how do we do it? Hi everyone, hope you have a great day. Welcome back to GOTE. This is the second video in the Viewers Questions Answered playlist. Wow, that's a tongue twister. And we have one here from LSU Man 1976. This was a couple of days ago. Do you offer one-on-one code reviews and troubleshooting? I would like to connect with you to discuss the options for working on a simple workbook VBA code with you. I am struggling with selecting multiple items from a data validation list. So I replied and he said, thanks, I hope to see the video. Now, LSU Man did actually solve it. He emailed me, thanks a lot. But I told him I would make a video anyway because I didn't know how to do this, and what I found out is intriguing. Basically, I'm here to tell you, stop being a copy-paste coder if you are, because I found a bad example online. Well, not bad, very unoptimized, and what I'm going to do is we're going to walk through the entire process of how we would think about this, all the way from the pseudo code to the bad example of the code, which does work, it's just unoptimized. I hate to say bad, more like unoptimized. I did learn a few things though, and then we're going to look at some optimized code, and we even found a bug that was in the online example, so stay tuned. Okay, so here we have the setup basically. So you saw this in the introduction of the video. So if you had a data selection, or sorry, a data validation, so for instance, this column here is validated against these, this column here is validated against these choices. How do you select more than one option? So by default, Excel will only let you select one option. You can't control click or command click. You can't shift click. You can only pick one option. So how in the world do we get more than one option from these lists in this selection here? Now first, let's look at the pseudo code. So this is the logic. If you're unfamiliar with pseudo code, it's not really code, it's the logic you're going to walk through in order to help you code on something kind of strange like this. So this is me, this isn't from the internet, this is me. I basically translated the original code into pseudo code, which is describing their method of how they did this. So first what they're going to do is they're going to verify changed cell. So the cell that we have changed on the worksheet, we're going to verify that it was only one cell that was changed, or we're going to stop, because obviously on a data validation, you can only select one cell at a time. If they did something where they highlighted 15 cells and hit delete, well, we don't want to run this code. We'll just stop the code. So they've changed one cell, so that's the first step. So if they've changed one cell, we're going to go now to step 2. First, we're going to set a range. So we're going to have a range variable. We're going to set it equal to all the worksheet cells that have data validation on this worksheet. So there's a special command in Excel, in VBA. You can basically get a range that includes any cell on the worksheet that has any sort of data validation behind it. Pretty interesting. Now, if that validation range is nothing, we're also going to exit. That means the user has changed a cell on a worksheet that does not yet have any validation, data validation anywhere in the worksheet. So again, we're going to stop. We don't need to run this code. Then we're going to run this special command called intersection. What we're going to do is we're going to compare the range of all the cells that have data validation against the cell they just changed. Now, if that intersection does not exist, again, we're going to do nothing, because what that means is they changed a cell on a worksheet that does have data validation, but that particular cell is not under data validation. So there's data validation somewhere in the worksheet, just not that cell. However, if that intersection exists, that means they've changed a cell that has data validation, and we're going to do this little dance right here. We're basically going to set a variable new equal to what the cell is currently, the current value of that cell. So we're going to set this variable new equal to that value. Then we're going to do an undo command. We're going to pull an undo command in Excel, and then we're going to set an old variable equal to that cell. So that's how we get a new and old variable, a value of what that cell formerly was and what it is now. And then what we're going to do is we're going to change the cell back to the new value. And then if the new value and the old value aren't blank, then we're going to set the cell equal to the old and the new. We're going to combine them together. I know it may seem a little confusing, but we'll walk through the code, and again, you'll see that pseudo code take shape as the logic. And then I'm going to show you, again, we're going to look at the web version of this code. Then I'm going to show you how I did it. And it's much more efficient, and it solves a bug that is in the original code. So first, let's, again, take a look at the pseudocode super quick, and then we'll switch over to the Excel code. So again, we're going to check to see if the cell was just one single cell that was changed. Then we're going to get a range equal to all the cells in the worksheet that are undergoing data validation. If none of the cells have any data validation, we just stop. Otherwise, we continue. Now we're going to check the intersection between the changed cell and all of the cells that have data validation to see if that cell has data validation. If it does, then we're going to do this little flip-flop back and forth with new and old values and do an undo, etc. Okay, so what I have on my screen is a sample worksheet here where, let's say, we're mixing different types of sodas together. So we can mix colors in the soda, and then we can mix flavors in the soda, and we can give it a name. So what we want to do is to be able to select multiple colors or just one color and multiple flavors. So for instance, if I select blue and I said, you know what, I want to mix blue and pink to make, see, I get double things, and then pink would be, let's see, peach, and then blueberry. So those are going to be the flavors for that soda. So here's the original code. I'm not going to give the website for the code. It was one of my first Google searches when I searched for Excel data validation multiple values VBA. So it was one of the first searches I found, or first results I found rather, and I just did a straight copy paste of the code. We're going to walk through the code, and I'm going to start to point out problems with this code. Now this code does work. There is a bug in it. However, it does work. I don't want to call it bad code. I want to call it inefficient code. So you can see right here, I have the stats for this code at the top. This is 37 lines of code. Now this counts spaces as well, from private sub all the way to the end of the sub. And it's 861 characters, not counting this comment row up here. So this is how this original code was written, and we're going to go through and I'm going to start pointing out problems with this code. Now again, this code is following the original pseudo code I showed you, and you'll see that logic come into play here. Now in pseudo code, you don't have to put every little detail in the code. It's just the main logical flow of what's happening. So here we have it. Here's our worksheet code behind it. Oh, let's go back to our worksheet. And again, you can see that we're able to select multiple values. So how are we doing that? So first of all, we want to put code behind the change event of the worksheet. So anytime this worksheet is changed, we have that code. Now what you can do is open your VBA editor. You can hit, I believe it's Alt F11 to get to it. You'll find your sheet here. So see your sheet number 1 here. Double click it, and you will go to, you'll see worksheet here, and you want to do the change event. You want to do the change event for the worksheet, and then we're going to start typing our code. Now the first thing this person did is, and first you have to understand, you know, let's give it a tab so we can make it at least a little bit prettier. Okay, so on the change event for a worksheet, you automatically get a range. Now I think it's called target originally. They had changed it to destination. You can change this. Basically, you're going to be passed automatically. The change event is going to be passed what range was just changed. It could be one cell, it could be lots of cells. They're all ranges. Even one cell is a range object in Excel. So you're going to be given this, and it's just going to be called destination in this example. So first they declare some variables. They give themselves a delimiter type. That's just the separator between the values. You see here, it's a comma, and you'll see later in code. Now that is a string. They give themselves a range dropdown as a range value, variable, and then they give themselves old value and new value as strings. Now what they do is, I'm going to put a space in here. They originally didn't have a space, but I like to put a space between my variable declarations and when I start doing code. First they said the delimiter type is equal to a comma and a space. So anytime I add a value to this and this code is successful, it's going to add a comma and a space. So it makes sense. We can go in here to this code. Let's say if we wanted to make this a double dash, we could make that a double dash. We could go in here and select green and then violet, and we have a double dash. So let's go back to a comma just because that's what the original code was, and let's delete this. Now, The first thing they want to do is they want to make sure that when something was changed, it was only one cell. And here's what we do here. So if I happen to do something like this, and then I hit delete, that code is not running because I just changed multiple cells. What they do is now remember, they're talking about a range. This is an object, so it has multiple properties and methods, etc. So destination is a range. One of the properties of a range object is the count, which is how many cells is it. So if the count is greater than 1, we're just going to exit the sub, because this means they did something that's not data validation. Like, you can't come in here in data validation and change 5 at a time. You can only change 1 cell at a time under data validation. So they stop that. Now they do this little line right here, which is on error resume next. So why are they doing this? I know why. Because what they're going to do now is they're going to try to set the other range, or the range variable range dropdown, equal to, they're going to make a special call called cells.special_cells, and then they tell it what special cells they're looking for. Now, I had to Google this because I had never seen this before. What they're trying to do is they have a range variable called range dropdown. What they want to do is they're referring to the worksheet. Now, they could have also just done this. I didn't know that you could just call cells. I thought you had to specify the worksheet you're talking about, but obviously it just defaults to the active worksheet. So they try to set it to the cells, which are the special cells. So cells.special_cells, and they're calling this special command here. You can Google this. All you have to do is Google or cells.special_cells in Google, and it'll take you to the object. So you know what? Actually, let's do that now. Let's go to Google. And we're just going to Google cells.special_cells. Okay, here we go. Now, pay attention to what this website says. You have to pay attention to this. Once you learn how to interpret the Excel object model, or any object model, again, I'm still learning the Excel. I'm very good at the Access. The Excel one's strange too. But when you call this, which range.special_cells, now you have to know that cells also returns a range, which is all the cells in the worksheet. So you have to know that. So it's talking about you called some kind of range, which in our case was called cells. So out of all the range of all the cells in the worksheet, now I'm going to look at special cells, the method, which also returns a range. So it returns a range object that represents all the cells that match the specified type and value. So down here you see the type, Excel cell type. If you click this, it's going to give you what you can type in there. And the one they type in there is this one right here, Excel cell type all validation. All that means is they want a range of all the cells that have validation rules behind it. And as a matter of fact, let's slightly modify this code and I can show you what this means. So watch this. If we debug .print, range dropdown address. So we can look at this range, if assuming it doesn't fail, we can look at the address and it'll print down here. So let's get rid of that error message and let's run this, and I'm going to show you what happens. Let me do a valid action, and here we go. The range dropdown address is E3 to F11. So these cells are in that range. They have data validation rules behind them. They may be different data validation, but they are data validation rules. So let's take this out here and continue on with the original code. So we've set that range dropdown and it did not fail. Now, why they did this, I have no idea. There's a problem here. There's a logical problem here. All they had to do was set the on error go to exit error at the top, because if they try to set this and it errors out, then obviously there is no validation range on this worksheet. So why they did an on error resume next and then on error, I'm not sure why that exists. That's kind of strange to me. I think it will work technically, but it's just bad code. Okay, and then they do this. They check to see if range dropdown is nothing. That means, okay, we tried to set the range. It's nothing because there's no cells in here that have data validation. So we're just going to go to exit error. They didn't need that. All they had to do was put this line above this attempted call, and so if it errors out, you know, okay, there's no range that has data validation. Carrying forward, it starts to get a little worse, folks. This is why you do not be a copy-paste coder. Do not be a copy-paste coder. Learn, think, and you're like, Jeremy, this is so hard. Yes, this is hard. However, I promise you, our brains are designed wonderfully that as you think and use your brain and figure this out, you become better at this. You become much better at coding. Trust me, if I can do it, you can do it. Let's go back to this thing here. Okay. Am I big? Am I small? I'm big. Yeah. Okay, so now they have the range of all the cells that have data validation. What they're going to do is they're going to run a special command called Intersect. Now, I had to look this up along with a couple of other commands. This is a very interesting thing. So let's do the Intersect Excel. So let's go back to Google, and we're just going to do intersect application intersect method. Again, pay attention to what this is the key to how to learn and code Excel. Returns a range object that represents the rectangular intersection of two or more ranges. If one or more ranges from a different worksheet are specified. Okay, so basically what this is saying is, it's saying, I want you to take that range, which is destination, which was passed. That's the cell that they originally changed. So I just changed this cell. Then I want you to intersect that cell with the range, which was drop down, which was, remember, this entire range. So I want you to intersect this and this. And if that equals something, if that is a range, then continue on. Otherwise, you're going to stop, because that means the cell you just changed is not in the data validation ranges. So if I do this, that does not intersect with that. That is a very novel approach to this. It is inefficient, but it is a very novel approach. And this was very interesting. I didn't know about the intersect command, so kudos to them for thinking outside the box. So what they do is they pull, they check, remember, this returns a range. So if intersect destination, so they're saying, okay, if that range is nothing, basically, don't do anything, because they changed something that's not intersecting this range right here. However, if they did, here's what we do. First, we pull an application.enableEvents false. What that does is that stops Excel from triggering events as we change this worksheet. You have to do this. Now, if you're an access person, did I say access? Excel. If I'm an access person, you wouldn't have to do this, because when you do code in access and you have an on-change event, the code does not trigger the on-change. That is different in Excel, apparently, at least for worksheets. So if I were to run this code without that call, what would happen is I would run this code, and if it was successful and it needed to do a change, it would do a change, then it would trigger the event again, that infinity, and it would lock up the program. So you have to make sure you put in enable events equals false. So you don't want to start doing triggering automatically. So we paused triggering. Now what? So now we're going to set our variable new value equal to the range they changed value. So for instance, I'm going to change this to green. So now new value is equal to green. Then we're going to do an undo. Again, this is happening very quickly, so you as a human aren't going to see this. We're going to undo, and we're going to set the old value equal to what this was. Now, it was blank before. So right now, I'm going to put a comment in here. New value is green, old value is blank. Then we're going to set the thing we just changed back to the new value, because we don't want to undo their work. So now it's back to green. So now this cell has been changed back to green instantly. Now, if old value equals blank, then do nothing. Okay, pro tip, folks. Pro tip here. If you have if statements or select case, etc., and this is what it reads. This is what it reads here. If it reads do nothing, you have bad Boolean logic. Do not do this. This is needless lines. This is needless. I don't need to weed through this. So this works, but it's bad code. Not bad code. Yes, it's bad code. It's not erroneous code. It's bad code. If old value equals blank, then do nothing. Otherwise, that means old value is not blank. Then I'm going to check new value if it's blank, is do nothing. This is a double whammy. You don't need to do this. So what they're saying is, if the old value is blank, I don't need to run this special code where I flip back and forth because they just set the initial value. And you can see here in our comments, that's what the values currently are. So none of this ran. Now what happens if I want to add another color to this? Okay, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to go green and then black. Okay, what just happened? So first of all, the new value equals what they changed to, which was black. So they chose black. The old value, I undid it, it was green. Remember, it was green. Oh, okay, so now we have two non-blank values. So if old value equals blank, it doesn't equal blank, it's something. Then we're here. If new value equals blank, it doesn't equals blank. Now we're here. So now the destination value, the cell value, is equal to the old value, which is green. Then I'm going to append the delimiter type variable, which is my comma. Then I'm going to append the new value, which was black, as we see up here. So let's run through the code one more time. So we pause application events. We set the new value equal to what they just changed to, which was just the word black. Then we undo that change, and we go back to the old value, which was green. Now, both of these failed, so we basically get down here. So now we say, oh, we have green and black. I'm going to combine those two, and I'm going to put my delimiter, which happens to be a comma, in between them. And we're going to do this again. So what if I choose pink? What is the new value? The new value was pink. What is the old value? The old value was green, comma, black. That was the old value of that cell. Oh, not pink. Pink. So again, this code worked. What if I hit delete? What happens? Well, the new value is blank. The old value was green, pink, pink, green, black, pink. So new value, okay, it doesn't run this code. And then at the very end, very important, you enable application events equals true. This is at the error handling stage. So even if we error out, we make sure we enable events. So if we hit an error somewhere in here. So folks, that is the original code. It does work, but there is an error. I'm going to show you the error after I show you the new code. This code does work. It's bad code though. It's not erroneous code, but it's pretty bad. Let's look at the new code and let's go through some improvements. Okay folks, so this is the GOTE version of this sheet. You will notice it looks exactly like the old one. I can select the colors here and it does exactly what the other one does. It lets me select multiple, I can delete, I can do this here. Let's look at this beautiful code over here. Now what was the old code? What was the old code? It was 37 lines, 861 characters. This new code is 18 lines, 537 characters. Less than half the number of lines. Let's walk through the logic. I don't even need to do pseudo code because you kind of know where we're going with this. But this is going to be a little different. We're on the worksheet change event because we need to know if the user has changed anything on the worksheet. And I changed the variable to P-cells. You will remember the original code had it as destination. That's just a choice. We're both talking about a range. As long as you remember that, I remember, oh, I've passed the cells that have been changed, cell or cells. I used plural. So I have my error handler statement right at the top. On error, go to exit error. Then I say if pcells.count is greater than 1, then exit sub. That's just like the original code. We want to make sure they've only changed one cell. Here's where things start to change radically. Instead of using a range dropdown and an intersect and all that good stuff, at the end of the day, all they're trying to determine is, does the cell that you just picked have a data validation behind it? Now, here is the tricky part. even if it doesn't, and you refer to this here, which is an object, it will return something. That's kind of a problem. However, I even tested it. I was wondering, I was like, wait a minute, why is P-cells validation, it should be blank? It was giving me a true. However, if you refer to one of the properties of it, formula, you want to know the formula, it's going to give you an error because it doesn't exist. It was a weird thing. So instead of getting a range of all the cells that have data validation, this was the range we're talking about. Instead of making that object and then doing the intersect between this cell and this, I just check this cell's data validation. I say if pcells.datavalidation.formula equals blank, then go to. Now, this will error out if the cell does not have data validation. That's fine. That's what we want. So check this out. Test. Notice I had an error here because I tried to refer to a property that does not exist. It just went to the error. Now I have it where it's printing out the error message. The original code didn't. You don't need to do this, but in case you're curious, that's what's happening. So that's okay. It's perfectly fine. I can edit this. Now when I get up here and I change something like this, I'll show you that it goes through the code because it does have data validation. There is a formula. Now, the old code had a delimiter variable. I chose to make it a constant because we know it's not changing in the code. I do constant delimiter. The $sign means as string. That's a shortcut. Constant delim. I give it a comma just like they did. And then I give myself the two variables, old value and new value. I said old val and new val. You can put them on the same line. You don't need to keep doing dim old val as string, dim new val as string. You just do this. So much shorter, so much easier to read. Again, we have to do the enable events equals false. And then we do the same little shake. There's no special command that I could find that lets you get the old value without doing this. Carrying on, I do the little back and forth here. Now, check this out. Check that. Look how clean this is. Let me extend this because this deserves to be extended. Look how clean this is. If old value is not blank and new value is not blank, then you're going to do the thing where you set the value equal to the old value, comma, new value. Compare this Boolean, compare this logic to this code here, where you're in an if, okay, then you're in an else part, then you're in a nested if, but then you don't do anything, but then you don't do anything again for another nested if. Folks, I don't know if they're punking people, if they did that on purpose. Maybe they're a new coder, that's fine. We all have to learn. At the end of the day, the only time this code runs is if old value is not blank and new value is not blank. So why not say that in an if statement? If old value is not blank and new value is not blank. Then, look at this, beautiful, one line. Then we hit our exit error and we enable the events. Always do this. Now then, I promised you there was a bug. Oh, there was a bug in the original code. Let's go back to the original code. Now we are looking at the original code. Let's go back to this sheet here. Check this out. Let's say I can delete. I can set the values, blue, green. What happens if I double click in a data validation? What happens? I'm going to show you. Watch this. I'm going to do blue, and then I'm going to double click, and then I'm going to just get out of it. It duplicates. It's counted as a new value, which is kind of strange. Now I check my data validation settings. Ignore blank and all that good stuff. It does not help. Watch this. What if I double click this again? And then I get out. I'm going to get an error. I'm going to hit cancel, and now, first of all, it just goes crazy. And then I have 4 blue. So it's going to keep duplicating that when I do a double click. I need to catch that. I need to prevent that. We don't need the user to be able to double click. Now, yes, it is nice if they want to delete the green in here, etc. No. That's going to be weird. we want them to either select an item or hit delete and carry on with their life. So how do we solve that? So this was kind of weird. I had to look this up to make sure I knew what I was doing. We have to do something on the before double click. I have no idea why it's called before double click. It's really after you double click. You gotta love Excel. Okay, so this is 5 lines, 185 characters. If you add these lines and these characters plus the GOTE code, it's still shorter than the original code and it doesn't have this error. So what I do, there's an event called before double click. All I say is I give it an error handler. If the target validation formula is not equal blank, then cancel equals true. So that stops the double click. So if the target, which is the range that it's passed, again, it's the cell or multiple cells. This is going to be one cell in this instance. If that range validation formula 1 is not equal blank, which on a data validated dropdown, it's not going to need a blank, then cancel, then stop the double. So watch what happens on sheet 3. So sheet 1, remember, sheet 1, I can double click out and it duplicates. That's not what we want. Watch this. I double click, nothing. Can't do anything. I can still single click and add all day if I double click, because some users don't know the concept of single and double click. I can double click nothing. I have to delete. Now granted, yes, I can't go in the list and let's say edit that middle pink out. I can't do that. I'm gonna have to delete and hit pink, but I'd rather have to do that than deal with this crazy stuff here. Watch this. Watch, what retry, okay, cancel. Where am I, what, oh my gosh, look at this is crazy, folks. You don't want that. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you learned something. Comment below if you have any questions. If you have any kind of questions, I'll make a video about it. God bless, have a great day.